Tell at parties that'll make you seem super cool and likable. In an average lifespan, a person breathes in around 45 pounds of dust and debris. You know how they say dogs' mouths are cleaner? That's because there's more bacteria in a person's mouth than there is people in Canada and the US combined. A man can grow up to 6 feet of nose hair in their lifetime and up to a 30-foot long beard if he never shaves. And if you ever wanted to swim in a pool of saliva, it would only take one person at the age of 60 to have produced enough saliva in his lifetime to fill up 2 pools. By the age of 60, a person will have lost 50% of their taste buds. That explains why old people like grits so much. The ear is actually really fragile, and it only takes about 7 pounds of force to rip your ear off.
Most common zodiac signs amongst different types of people. Billionaires, Leo. Serial killers, Pisces. Famous people, Aries. Major CEOs, Capricorns. Psychopaths, Scorpios. Need help with your homework? Click the link in our bio.
Here are secrets hidden in everyday things. Part 2. The cereal that we eat has a magnetic force to it. If you were to take a metal rod and place it a few inches toward a floating cereal flake, it would follow the magnet. This is because our cereals contain iron, which is added during food production. If you ever wondered why movie theater seats are usually red, it's because in the 18th century, Italian opera houses had red seats as a way to attract wealthy theater goers. That, and red has a longer wavelength for our eyes to detect. And this makes it harder to see in the dark. So when the lights go down in the movie theater, it'll all be dark. If you were to take a Coca-Cola, place it in a bowl, and then put it into a solution that contains sodium hydroxide, the can will go through a chemical reaction that causes the aluminum can to dissolve, and revealing a plastic lining. And this shows how acidic the drink really is. And the colorful bread tags mean a lot more than just sealing the bread in the plastic package. The different colors are meant to help employees know when to restock the bread, but they can also help customers shop smarter. You see, each color represents a different day of the week the bread was baked. Blue for Mondays, green for Tuesdays, red for Thursdays, white for Fridays, and yellow for Saturdays. So the next time you shop for bread, you can find out which loaf is the freshest.
This is why you always want to double check before getting into your car. 18-year-old Peyton Washington was shot 3 times after her and her friend entered a car that they thought was theirs. On April 2023, Peyton and her friend Heather were carpooling on their way home from cheer practice when Heather opened a car door that she thought was hers. 25-year-old Pedro Rodriguez was in the passenger seat, and once Heather realized that it wasn't her car, she apologized and walked away. But Pedro did not let that slide. Instead, he came out of his car and began shooting at the teens. The girls quickly got into their car and drove away, but Peyton was shot in the leg and back. She suffered life-threatening injuries and was airlifted to a nearby hospital. Her injuries were so bad that her spleen had to be removed, and now Pedro was charged with deadly conduct, and he may be spending 10 years in prison if convicted. But you know what, guys? This actually happens more often than you think. I remember a couple years ago when I was just chilling in my car at night and 2 random men just came in and thought I was their Uber. I was caught off guard and I was ready to just jump out of my car. And then we kind of looked at each other and one of the guys was like, "This is our Uber, right?" And I'm like, "No, this is not your Uber." It's a fight or flight situation. That's how I felt in the moment. But in this case, these girls, they apologized, closed the car door and walked away. And this guy still came after them with a gun and shot them. So I don't know. I can't justify that.
Let me get a pair of twins. All right. They're born the same time. They're the same age. And now one of them I will send off at 90% the speed of light. And the other I'll keep down here on Earth. So we can ask, how do their aging rates compare? Okay? Turns out, this twin that I've already sent, his clock ticks 44% as fast as this twin's clock, our clock, here on Earth. So, this twin is aging more slowly than this one. That's at 90% the speed of light. Let's pump it up some more. How about 99% the speed of light? Now the time ticks at only 14% the rate, as it does back here on Earth. How about 99.9%? We're getting closer and closer to the speed of light itself. And at that speed, the clock ticks only 4.5% as fast. So, what does this mean? Tell you what it means. This twin that traveled for 5 years and comes back, if they went at 99.9% the speed of light, after 5 years, They're 5 years older. We have aged 110 years. It's called the twin paradox.
These are the top 5 worst zodiac signs. Number 5, Virgo. Nothing wrong with them, but they take everything way too personally. Sorry. Number 4, Taurus. They're just very stubborn people and will probably hold a grudge. Very frustrating. Number 3, Gemini. These people are very two-faced or have two sides. You never know which one you're gonna get. Number 2, Libra. They just have problems with commitment and probably are talking to more than one person. And number 1, Leo. They're just way too dramatic about literally everything. Straight up.
This is how a fight over a parking spot led to this man losing his life. On March 8th, 2020, 19-year-old Ricky Lafargue took a parking spot that 31-year-old Tuan Nguyen and his wife were waiting for at the Lenox Square shopping mall in Atlanta. Immediately after this happened, both Ricky and Tuan said some things to each other, but then they both went their separate ways and entered the mall at different times. You would think that they would go on about their days and forget this ever happened, but that wasn't the case. Ricky, who was with 4 of his friends, later decided to follow Tuan out of the mall and confront him again. During the altercation, Ricky pulled out his handgun and shot Tuan in the back of the head, instantly taking his life. Then the 4 men tried to flee in their SUV, but then they crashed, so they ran away and Ricky dropped his hat and the gun. Ricky's defense argued that he tried to hit Tuan with the gun and it accidentally went off. But the surveillance footage in the mall clearly shows what exactly happened. And what's so shocking about this is that this man did all of this in broad daylight with so many witnesses.
It was pure evil, with a gun pointed to the back of that victim's head when you pulled the trigger and killed a man, leaving his family and his child with no father.
Ricky, who is now 24 years old, was finally sentenced and the judge gave him life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Sometimes in movies, when dogs have to look very mean and threatening, they actually have to redo their tails with CGI because they won't stop wagging because they're doing such a good job acting. When bees run into each other, they actually make like a little whoop sound. Fish are actually able to recognize their owners. There's this weird misconception with people that they think that fish can't see out of the glass of their aquarium, but they actually have surprisingly good eyesight.
Of course I could talk about snakes, and because you asked so politely, I'm gonna ruin your day. Here's all the ways this snake can turn you into an... Actually, let's do something different. This is a hog-nosed snake, although I like to call him the possum tail. Why? This anxiety noodle's so afraid of the world, if they get pressed by like a kitten, they'll straight up fake their own death. I'm talking about they'll fully commit to it. They'll release the smell of expiration, if you know what I mean. They'll let their tongues hang out of their mouths like a cartoon. Hoggers will even straight up deuce themselves in the process, just to sell it, right out of the possum playbook. You see, the garter snake had a problem. They hibernate, and when they come out, the ratio can be something like hundreds of males for just one female. So to fight statistics, some snakes will cosplay as a female. They'll even release the same pheromones as a female, and will use that to lead a bunch of guys on. And right when the down bad Medusa braids are about to tie themselves into a knot, the cross-dressing male snake slips away to hook up with the actual she-snake. Speaking of mother snakes, turns out there's snakes that actually will look after their kids, and I don't just mean babysitting eggs. Snakes like the African rock python will look after their little snakelets a couple weeks after they hatch, which makes it a snake anomaly. The smallest snake in the world is the Barbados thread snake, which can comfortably sleep on a quarter. It's believed there's a type of snake that has this weird odd couple type relationship with screech owls, where the owls keep blind snakes in their nest to be housekeepers to basically eat all the stuff that can make the little owlet sick. In exchange, the snakes get free room and board as well as the added bonus of not getting put on a shirt. You ever see a snake drinking water? No? Well, here you go, and the more you know.
Comforting facts that will make your day. In movies where they use dogs as actors, editors have to commonly CGI another tail on the dog because they won't stop wagging it. Because guinea pigs are considered very social animals, it is illegal and considered animal abuse in Switzerland to own just one. All of the cardigans Mr. Rogers wore on camera were knit by his mother. Bees take naps in flowers. This penguin that lives in Norway was actually recently officially knighted. Otters hold each other's hands when they sleep so that their mate won't float away. Van Gogh didn't start painting until his late 20s. Whatever you're going through in life right now, it's not gonna last forever. Follow for more.
Wholesome facts that'll make your day slightly better, part 1. When a human sees a puppy, a chemical called dopamine is released in the brain. Elephants also release dopamine when they see people, meaning that they think we're cute in the same way we think puppies are cute. There's a YouTube channel called Dad, How Do I that teaches young people things that would typically be taught by a father figure. From how to change a tire to how to tie a tie, fans of the channel think it's super helpful. When you're on a walk with your dog and they stop to take a dump, you may notice that your fluffy friend is staring at you as they poop. They do this because they're in a defenseless position and they're trusting you to keep them safe. There are more public libraries in the US than McDonald's. After the horrific events of 9/11, a small Kenyan tribe known as the Maasai people gave 14 cows to the US in their support. The man who played Mickey Mouse ended up marrying the woman who played Minnie Mouse, meaning that true love actually exists.
Fun facts you wouldn't believe are true. Godzilla is an actual citizen of Japan. Some species of jellyfish are actually immortal. The patent for a fire hydrant was destroyed in a fire. Outer space is only 62 miles away. You could drive there in an hour. If you flattened your lungs out, they would have about the same surface area as a tennis court. Saturn is the lightest planet. If there was a big enough body of water, it would float. An astronaut spacesuit runs about $12 million. The moon looks close, but you can actually fit every planet in the solar system between the Earth and the moon. In a lab here on Earth, scientists created a plasma that reached a temperature of 9.9 trillion degrees Fahrenheit. Over 50,000 people on Earth have alien abduction insurance policies.
For the first time in Japan right now, diapers for adults are starting to outsell diapers for babies. The country's birth rate hit yet another all-time low last year, and estimates show that in less than 50 years, 40% of their population will be over the age of 65. Diaper maker OG Holdings announced last year that they would stop making nappies for babies and instead focus on ones for adults, and another said that their revenue from adult diaper sales is already double that of those meant for babies. And the thing is, it's not just Japan. Birth rates are falling in countries around the world, not Nigeria though, and by 2050, research from the Lancet shows over 3/4 of the world's countries will not have high enough fertility rates to sustain their population size over time. So if we don't go out with a bang, let's try not go out with a whimper.
You ever stop and think about the random animal rivalries of nature the average person knows nothing about? Take the leopard, arguably the most talented life taker in the feline family. Not only does a rosette warrior, those are rosettes, occupy more real estate than any other big cat, they have by far the longest grocery list with not 20, not 30, but over 90 different animals in their diet. Not to mention for spending 0 hours in the gym, leopards might just have the craziest deadlift. Now take baboons, a pack-loving primate that weaponizes the always OP power of friendship. You see, divided baboons are leopard lunch meat. United and the baboon mafia can, will, and have jumped looming leopards and left them with a life lesson. And with more canines than a cop unit, baboons are not pushovers. Hey, but don't feel too bad for the leopard. Her luck changes as soon as the sun goes down. Leopards have overpowered night vision, and you'd be right if you said they abuse it. They'll make sure they do most of their food shopping in the darkest conditions possible. We're talking about an aerial assassin parkouring from branch to branch like an Olympic level gymnast, and that's how a member of the monkey militia can get turned into mincemeat. So when it comes to leopards and baboons, yeah, it's on sight. That conflict is generational. But you gotta remember, they're just two animals trying to survive. You can root for the monkey, but just know, every time the baboon gets away, that's a leopard cub that has sleep for dinner. And mama leopard can't provide for her family without possibly turning a monkey minor into an orphan. Leopards and baboons are just two of the thousands of mammals navigating the gauntlet of the wild. And to see them and many more in action, Mammals is a series narrated by the always transcendent Sir David Attenborough, launching this July on BBC America, AMC Plus, and other platforms worldwide. And with some rarely ever recorded footage like this, yeah, it's not something you want to miss. The more you know.
Photos that seem really innocent but are actually heartbreaking. Part 1. This is Magda Newman, and she seems like a perfectly happy, normal pregnant woman who's about to become a mom. However, her giving birth would be anything but normal, and that moment that was supposed to be so special soon turned into something terrifying. Magda went into labor for nearly 17 hours, and when she gave birth, she realized that something was very wrong. She quickly realized that the baby wasn't breathing or crying, and the baby's face was severely disfigured with no ears, no cheekbones, and no eye sockets. It turns out her baby was born with a super rare genetic disorder called Treacher-Collins syndrome, and if doctors didn't act fast, the baby would soon be dead from lack of oxygen. The baby's name was Nathaniel, and by the time he was 1 year old, he'd already gone through 11 different surgeries. And by the time he was 11, he already went through 54 different major surgeries. This story does have a happy ending, because today Nathaniel's living a perfectly normal life. Nathaniel even has a book and a movie made after him called Wonder, and his story continues to inspire countless people around the world to this day.
Here are foods you didn't know secretly changed. Part 3. First, Pringle cans have shrunk. Since 2016, they've shrunk in width from 5.2 ounces to 4.7 ounces. Now, the company says that this is because their new manufacturing company in Malaysia has different equipment. But it doesn't excuse the fact that you can fit one of the new cans into an original can perfectly. Even the chips themselves have shrunk too. Gatorade has also fallen victim to shrinkflation by giving their customers less energy. They released new bottle designs in 2022, and while it's the same height, they decreased the amount of liquid contained by 14%. And they tricked customers into paying a slightly higher price by making it look like it had the same amount as the original bottle. Toblerone in 2016 changed the formation of its triangular bar, giving us less chocolate in the process. You see, they took out 2 of the peaks and widened the gaps between the remaining ones, and this reduced the cost of production by 10%. But yet they dare to still charge us the same price and keep them in their original packaging. And in 2016, Kraft Mac and Cheese removed its artificial preservative flavors from its recipe and decided to add more natural ingredients like turmeric and paprika. And this was after parents started to show concern for what their kids were putting into their bodies. However, just because these ingredients are more natural doesn't mean they weren't enhanced in labs. And no one noticed the change because it still tastes the same.
Here are historical facts I wish I didn't know. Number 1. King Herod executed his wife and then preserved her body in honey for 7 years. Some people even claim he had relations with it. Number 2. In 1184, a bunch of nobles met in a church in Erfurt, Germany. Their weight made the floor collapse, they fell into the latrine below, and many of them drowned in liquid poop. Number 3. Rasputin once bragged about not changing his underwear for 6 months, and food would often rot in his beard. Number 4. Lady Caroline Lamb was so obsessed with her ex-lover Lord Byron that she once sent him clippings of her pubic hair. Number 5. William Randolph Hearst is the inspiration behind Citizen Kane, the movie where Rosebud is famously a sled. In real life, Rosebud was reportedly Hearst's nickname for his mistress Marion Davies, but it referred to her lady parts. Number 6. Catherine Medici was just 14 when she married, but on her wedding night, her father-in-law stayed in the bedroom and watched until the marriage was fully consummated. Public beatings were a big thing. On William of Orange's wedding night, King Charles II watched from the sidelines and shouted encouragement. Number 7. Mozart loved bathroom humor and wrote letters to his family describing his farts in great detail.
This is wild. An engineering company in Bharuch, India announced that they will be holding open interviews for 10 new positions at the company. But then, the next day, reports say that over 1,800 people showed up. Videos from outside the hotel where the interviews were taking place show so many people squeezed on the platform that the metal railings eventually broke, sending people flying off the edge. Reports say that the company was so overwhelmed by the amount of people showing up that they closed their doors to the whole of the interviews, leading to the situation you see here. Politicians in India were quick to use this video to highlight the problems in India's job market right now.
The biggest lottery winners and where they are now. In 2008, Jonathan Vargas became the youngest Powerball jackpot winner ever when he won $35.3 million at just 19 years old. The first thing he did with the money was buy his mom a brand new house and buy himself a Range Rover and a mansion. He then decided to fulfill his childhood dream and created his own wrestling TV show called Wrestlicious Takedown. The show featured scantily dressed women and sketch comedy, but apparently that wasn't enough to make it successful. It was quickly met with incredibly bad reviews, and after just 1 season, the show was cancelled. All of his other investments eventually failed as well, which reportedly left him bankrupt.
Let's talk about one of the most interesting and disturbing individuals in human history, Terrare, the man who could eat anything. Terrare was a Frenchman born around the year 1772 in the city of Lyon. From a young age, he developed an unusually large appetite, and as a result of this, his parents couldn't afford to provide for him, and as a young teen, he was kicked out of his house and told to fend for himself. As he grew older, his appetite grew with him and he began to resort to eating grotesque things like live animals, whole cats, dogs, and even barrels full of corks. As a way to make some money, Terrari began to work as a street performer, eating whatever people would give to him. However, even this was not enough to satisfy his appetite, and he would often resort to digging through the trash in order to find extra scraps of food on his off time. After the War of First Galatians broke out, Terrari enlisted in the military and began to work as a spy. He would swallow important documents, carry them across enemy lines, and then deliver them to officials on the other side. However, having no other qualifications, this didn't last very long, and he was eventually put into a military hospital due to his condition. During his stay at the Institute, they would perform a series of bizarre experiments in an attempt to cure him of his appetite. However, nothing worked, and after he was caught drinking the blood of other patients and accused of eating a toddler, they expelled him from the hospital. Just 4 short years later, Terrari caught a case of severe tuberculosis and died a rather gruesome death, which I will not discuss here. Comment what the weirdest thing you've ever eaten is, and follow for more.
What monster plans the murder of their child on Halloween? This disturbed man named Ronald Clark O'Brien. On Halloween in 1974 in Deer Park, Texas, Ronald took his 8-year-old son's life by giving him this candy that was filled with cyanide. From the outside in, Ronald seemed to have a pretty good life. He was married and had 2 kids, Timothy, who was 8 years old, and his daughter Elizabeth. He had a great job as an eye doctor, but Ronald was $94,000 in debt and he needed a way out. On this night, Ronald took his 2 kids to go trick-or-treating, and along came his neighbor with his kids as well. The routine that night was that Ronald would walk to the front doorstep with the kids to collect the candy while his neighbor stayed behind. In one of those house visits, Ronald managed to slip a few pixie sticks filled with cyanide in the kids' candy bag and made it seem like one of the houses gave it to them. When the kids got home, Timothy asked his father to open some candy, and Ronald purposely opened a pixie stick and gave it to Timothy and watched him eat it. Within just 1 hour, Timothy became extremely sick and passed away in the ambulance. Medical records quickly revealed that Timothy was poisoned with cyanide. Once they discovered that the cyanide was inside this specific candy, Ronald claimed that he got it from a house that they visited on that night. But after investigating, they discovered that no one was even in that house on that night, so Ronald was lying. The investigation turned towards Ronald and they discovered that he was asking around where he could find cyanide. But he became even more suspicious when they found out that he was in so much debt and that he took out a $20,000 life insurance policy on both his kids. And he took out this policy a month before Timothy passed away. And it gets worse. Ronald also called the life insurance company the morning after Timothy passed away to collect the money. He was charged with 1 count of murder and 4 counts of attempted murder and was sentenced to death. Ronald was executed in 1984, but he kept his innocence until the day he died.